Hello, welcome to this third panel for today. I'll just wake up my computer so I can know what I'm talking about. So I'm Staffan with GS1 Sweden, so I've been asked to moderate this panel. And the panelists are, starting over here, Mario Osterwalder from Circular.fashion. We've seen you on stage or speaking earlier today. Tilmann Vahle from Systemiq, also speaking earlier today. Gayko from Frade, also speaking earlier today. And Joao from Digit, not speaking earlier today. So those of you that long for another 400 slides or 400 pages, no slides, no documents from this panel. So only people actually speaking to each other. So that's the plan. And actually, there's one topic, one question for the panel. So we may end very early here. So, but I have some backup questions, so don't worry. So the panel that we are being asked here, or the question we're being asked to this panel is, what needs to happen before full technical deployment of the DPP system? And before you answer, well, we see that we spent all day, almost all day, in the morning, focusing on the regulatory background and the why. Why are we doing this? Why DPP? And then another half day on the how should it work? So one big learning, I guess, is there are a lot of perspectives. But back to the question, what needs to happen before full technical deployment of the DPP system? So I'll start. Let's go from left to right. So Mario, please.
Well, I think I will not speak about standardization now, which will be very important, but I think Jens will say more about this, so I leave that out. From my perspective, I'm working on this since 2017 when we founded Circular.fashion, basically. And what I learned during this time, when we started, we thought, well, we implement a circular economy and certain practices. We know we have a concept in mind, and that's how it goes. Reality looks different. We can create theoretical concepts, what we are doing right now, but we really have to look into the practice. And I think this needs to be the focus in the next 3 years, to pilot as much as possible, look into the details. We will learn things when we do things, and there are so many detailed questions which came today as well. Someone, for example, asked, will RFID tags or any kind of data carriers be cut out when they arrive at the sorter or the recycler? And the question is, maybe it depends how you do it. We, for example, did a project a few years ago where we integrated RFID tags, and sorters usually told us 50% of care labels are cut out when they are coming back. But in this case, we located them in a way that they are not likely to be cut out, and indeed 99% of the data carriers were still there. And I think we need to look really into details, and for example, it would be helpful if we have a guideline until 2027 which helps brands how to integrate a data carrier, for example. Just to give one example, I think that's what we have to do in the next years.
So getting practical. So moving to Tilmann.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to disagree with that. Definitely moving into application from the theory to practice is very important. Now, obviously, in Battery Pass, we're focusing on batteries and on the battery regulation. With that, we have a bit of the privilege of having regulation that is a few years earlier than the remaining DPPs. And it also has an advantage of having highly concentrated, very large corporations that make up the bulk of the batteries that are expected to the markets, right? Especially electric vehicles. There isn't really very many SMEs that produce cars. And also the battery manufacturers, I mean, we can probably all name the top 5 of them that represent 90% of the market. Nonetheless, there's also smaller companies that are a little bit caught in between, right? If you look at stationary storage companies, there's a lot more custom or niche companies, be it producing cells or modules, and then also for light means of transport, scooters, bikes, and the like. It's very different market dynamics. Right? In the bike sector, e-bike sector, it's really the manufacturers like behind the brand, so to speak, that are actually the large ones. And so even there, we see a bit of dynamic. And there it's, I think, a matter of moving into getting that MVP out, that first iteration of that it works. if we, I mean, we talked a lot about, ontologies and frameworks and the standards for the technical systems, and that can be very overwhelming. What is at the face of it ultimately, though, the also a fact is that for manufacturing companies managing data systems and databases, it's their everyday work, right? And so it is ultimately the DPP itself is not a magical, very complex database at the front end, and how it can be fixed on the back end, that is really a matter of for the companies to decide, right? Because that is not really defined in the DPP system, which is good. So it's companies figuring out how do I get the data from my business relations, from my suppliers, to feed into the platform. And the first shot shouldn't be the perfect one, right? So moving early to have iterations. So by 2027, February 2027, you're there and have an auditable system that actually works fully.
So moving from theory to practice, it's the same next step. So Jens, over to you.
Yeah, I try. I'm sitting between the microphones. Of course, if you ask me, the answer is simple. The answer is we need standards, of course. But I tell you a secret, standards are not the only thing we need, I have to say. Well, I think in Europe we have more than 1 million economic operators, so companies placing product into the market. So it's already late in the afternoon. I'm not sure if all the people are still awake, but how many economic operators are in this room? Who is working at a company placing products into the market? So there's 1, 2, 3. Nice. Better than 0. So, but I think there is still room for improvement. Of course, we don't know. Probably 2,699 from the 2,700 people in the web are at economic operators. Maybe. Well, we don't know. So, of course, we need really to have a path that they can implement it from 2027. And I think this is still a long way to go. Because I think it's a little bit symptomatic here in the room. We have many people interested in this topic. We see it also on other conferences or events like that. There are many people doing research on this, offering solutions, offering services, or people like standardization. They are at every event or something like that. But hardly you see the economic operators. But they have to implement it in the end. So what Tilmann and Mario said before, I think we need to learn. We need prototypes. We need to step up. Maybe we need also to really think about a roadmap and start in 2027 with something like a minimum viable product to make life easier. And then the companies can learn. And I mean, that is a kind of principle of hope what we have, that we say by starting eating, you get the appetite. So once you force the small and medium-sized enterprises to issue a DPP, maybe they say, oh yeah, maybe it makes sense, and we can build up further services. But we don't know. And we have a free economy, so it's their decision. We just, on the one hand, we force these companies to do something in the digital world, and we hope that they do more. But, I mean, we should be aware what we are asking all the companies, and there are millions of companies, and many of these companies don't have a chief digitization officer, or even there is, in many of these companies, there is not even one person who has been at a university. We have been aware of that. And so I think there is really a long journey we need to go. And therefore it's important that we have several initiatives, but they need to be well adjusted.
So I should start by saying it's an honor and a pleasure to be here with you. Since last time I spoke about the DPP, I got like 100 invitations on LinkedIn. I think it's good to clarify that I'm not responsible for the policy side. Michele is. I'm actually coming from... Michele is sitting there. Because people just like wondered, right? Who is this Joao guy and what is he doing? Let's just like send him all these questions over LinkedIn. So then I had to refer them to Michele. So just that you know, but I'm really happy to be here. When it comes to answering the question, I think that the first thing is that, of course, this is a decentralized system. So the Commission cannot do it on its own. This is why I like to hear the word ecosystem. So we need a strong ecosystem. of service providers, of solution providers, of issuers, of identifiers, of the Commission as well, because we will provide a DPP registry. And then the question is, how do you create an ecosystem around a new technology, right? According to us, is what you said, we need standards, we need clear, and I would say stable standards. Rigo is laughing because we had many discussions about this in a previous life, but you cannot, let's say, implement anything just with the standard. Let's be honest. Standards is a great start, but it's not everything. So you need support services, and this is how in the Commission you kind of probably know me if you have been looking at the building blocks. This is what we do in DG for Informatics. We provide supporting services to the implementers of open standards, and we do that by giving them guidelines, by putting them in contact, creating webinars, sharing experience, showing what it works, incentivizing people to contribute to the ecosystem, and then finally, testing. Once you understand the standard, once you know what you have to do, once you have the ecosystem building for you, you need to test. Without testing, this doesn't work, I assure you. You can try. This is why we always say, test before you invest, meaning that we need a lot of testing services. Actually, I learned this the hard way. I also was a believer in standards. Then I understood we needed supporting services. And finally, I concluded that if you don't bring people to the testing ground and make them work together to say, I send you a DPP, you read the DPP, can you use it in your workflow? Can you not use it? You know, all this is extremely important for the success of an ecosystem, is to know that there are these three things, and I repeat, standards that are stable, will not change the next day, support services that help me understand how I should implement the standard, and then testing services that allow me to know that I did the job the right way. And if you have these three things, and you focus the services to each one of the key actors of this ecosystem, service provider, issuing agencies, economic operators, the Commission, because we are builders as well, then I think that slowly but surely it will be, that's my belief, not a formal, let's put it, line of the Commission, but the DPP will become a building block of the single market, because essentially it touches upon, you know, all sorts of products, can be used and reused in so many ways. So to me, it's really inspiring, as being working for building blocks for so many years, to have an involvement in this ambitious project. And as I said, not a policy guy, I'm actually helping to build this. We are really in the very beginning, but I agree with all that was said.
So thank you. So through the chat, we've received a lot of questions today about the system being decentralized. So we've seen that was the starting point of your statement now, that this is a decentralized system, but we received questions like, well, they say it's a decentralized system, but then you're setting up two centralized portals, and you know, how is that centralized? And then we see on various slides that depict the architecture today. Some of the slides have quite a few things that are centralized, that look centralized, and only the little building blocks run by the economic operators are actually decentralized. So what's your response to this? Maybe this should be clarified a little bit.
Yeah, I think the data is decentralized, therefore the system is decentralized. So that's where is the data? In the first place, where is the data? So if the data is, you know, everywhere, then it's a decentralized system. If the data is in a single point, that's a centralized system. I'm being very simplistic, but follow the data. When it comes to centralized and decentralized and federated, that is something in between.
Yeah, and then the follow-up question. I just want to add one more. Yeah.
I would say these are two of the typical misunderstandings. The one is to say the system should be decentralized, and the second one is a standard should be technology independent. These are nice targets, but it's hardly to achieve. At the end, you need some agreement on basic standards. I mean, today what we saw, basically, I have the feeling we all agreed on the internet as a standard to use it. I mean, it is a kind. It's so in our daily life that we all agreed to that. But implicitly, we all agreed to use internet technologies, more or less. So it's really hard to make a standard completely technology independent. I mean, we see this also for other areas. If you go for machinery safety or electrical safety or whatever, if you go really down to earth, you see you have some technical assumptions, but they are common ground, and there's where all parties agree to. And then based on that, you can start. The second one is decentralized system. So we need trust, and for trust, you need a kind of trust anchor. And there is, in my knowledge, only one more or less decentralized system. This is the Bitcoin system, but the Bitcoin system is not the best one for the economy with this energy consumption and this heavy mathematics behind it. And also still it's not known who issued this and if there is a backdoor, so I'm not sure if this is a good idea. So nevertheless, you need also a kind of trust anchor. But again, the role of the centralized part should be, in my eyes, as small as possible to avoid any dependencies and to avoid any vendor lock-in effects or something like that. We have in Europe the blue guide of the new legislative framework of or how the internal market works. And there, as I understood it, the EU Commission decided we need also a kind of trust anchor, and these are the accreditation system. And they are kind of monopoly they have. But this is a quite small group because these accrediting agencies, they do the accreditation of the test and certification institutes. So it's an indirection, and the business is quite small, so the economy accepts that there is a centralized system and as a trust anchor. And from that on, you have a decentralized system. So no fully decentralized system, but as decentralized as possible.
And some of the questions also received that is that, well, if it's a decentralized system, then it has to be blockchain. Any comment on that?
So a little anecdote that I like to tell on this matter. So in my previous life, I worked with EY on auditing data, like sustainability, financial, and so on. And during that time, the blockchain hype rolled around for the first time. Very exciting. We were all like fixed on it. And since then, I've made it a little bit of a pet project of mine to ask people that really know their stuff, that actually run blockchains and implement this, what solution this gives to them that they cannot solve with any other means. I have not received an answer so far.
So thank you so much. Great answer. So thank you for these clarifications. I thought we'd bring them up since we have a good panel here on this little stage. So moving on a little bit. So we talked about what needs to happen before full deployment. So I want to ask two questions, but I'll ask them both at once and then we'll just circulate. So what will be the most difficult thing moving forward? And what, even more interesting, what will be much easier than people thought moving forward? Do you want to start, Mario?
I think...
or do you want me to ask someone else?
I'm not sure if this is now the most difficult thing. But I see that we have different requirements from the data provider side and the data user side. We have on the one hand data providers, which usually want to provide as less as possible data, as this costs money, and we have on the other side data users, which need more information if they want to really conduct their services in sense of a circular economy. And I think this will be a political question which we need to solve in the next few years, and which data points will really be there. I think there is a risk that big producers will try to reduce that. On the other hand, there is also a risk that we make that not feasible for smaller companies especially, and that it becomes too expensive. And just one thought I had within that, we have now heard today a lot that there are so many SMEs out there. But if I walk through cities in Europe and I look at fashion stores, I also see that probably this is just a feeling, 90% of clothing is coming from probably top 100 companies. You can check that and maybe you have better figures, but I see that a big amount of garments are coming from the big ones, Obviously, there are small companies behind as well, which have to provide that data. But I think from my work in the Product Information 4.0 project, I learned that, for example, in the IMDS, in the automotive industry, they did a lot of work to give guidance to the small companies and provide them the tools that they can provide data. So I think in this direction we have to work on. And one last point, I think also we speak a lot about sustainability performance indicators, and we take the energy labeling as an example for that. And I also don't see yet the definition of these sustainability performance indicators has not happened yet, and we also have to look into this. What will it be? What information do we need for that? And I would also suggest there that we look into what's already there. And as a co-founder from Circular Fashion, I also have to say here that, for example, circular design criteria, etc., should be considered when we look at this direction.
Well, thank you.
I think what was really uplifting today in particular, and that reflects also what we see and have actually experienced also in the Battery Pass project. Konrad earlier showed how they developed the MVP and kind of brought the technical standards and also the content work to life. I've seen many examples of that in the battery space for sure. We've seen many in the textile and electronic space today, and I think the overarching experience is that at the core of it, to actually make a DPP happen, it can be very quick. And so the technology side, I'm not too concerned about. It's not trivial, but it can be, by software professionals, it can be built quite quickly and even like plugged together with open source and all sorts. And then also the hyperscalers, the large software companies, I mean, they're like knocking at the doors everywhere because they think, this is interesting, the next app store that we can provide. So I wouldn't worry much about the software side of things. I think I don't know if it's the most difficult or at least one of the most important things in my mind or from our experience also engaging with industry is that it's quite important that we move and evolve this topic out of regulatory governmental affairs type, Brussels topic, if I may, and a compliance topic into one of business execution, business development, strategy and opportunity. And I think there is a real risk that if the community here fails to do so, I mean, we all know how the debate runs in media and social media these days on, overarching the kraken of the Brussels legislators, that a blowback could be created that could be quite severe on the entire project, basically. But there is real business value. We're really convinced about that. That's why we have so many industrial companies and practical researchers with Fraunhofer, with Circular, the automotives in our group, and we're quite convinced that there is that value. That's why we did that study, and we're finding quite encouraging results for batteries. And to make that clear and describe that narrative, it's an opportunity. Once you get it sorted, you can build more business, be more efficient, I think that's very important so that it actually becomes business rather than just a compliance exercise.
Very good. Jens, please.
Yeah, fully agree to Tilmann. The easiest thing is to provide a kind of DPP. And the difficult is to provide a good DPP where the companies know what is expected from them exactly, how to get the data along the supply chain, how to have a modular or open system where they can have additional services and use cases on and build up their own digital services based on this one. Where it is really decentralized or whatever, how to avoid a vendor lock-in and so on. Because when I talk to the industry people, whether they are from the large enterprises or from small and medium-sized enterprises, one of their major targets is to stay as independent as possible. So they really hate vendor lock-in because then this restricts them in their own decisions as in their company. And that will be really the hard thing to have all these aspects in mind. But the good thing is to turn into good things at the end. Again, we can start step by step and to start with DPP and to learn on it. That's, I think, feasible. As Tilmann say, IT professionals can collect this within a few days or whatever you said, hours to days, as you said. Thanks.
Yeah, I agree with everything that was said. There is the technology aspect, but then there's the human aspect. And that's a fundamental aspect that we have to take into account. It is not only about technology. I mean, companies, legal entities, and then the humans behind them have expectations. So we have to deliver on those expectations. We have to understand their needs. And I think abstraction is always great, but we have to actually put ourselves in the shoes of the people that we are trying to provide the solution. And I think this has always been a very tricky, let's say, because there are trade-offs, right? So you want to get the job done, you have to get the DPP out, but at the same time, you need to understand what is on the other side. How do we make it, relevant, positive to actually the users? And we should have a user-centric view, not a technological view. And I agree with what you said, because it goes in this direction. I think more and more technology has to work for the end result, which is to meet the expectations of people and give them something they didn't have in a positive way. Yeah.
So thank you. So I'll try and summarize this. So what we're seeing here, and I totally agree, is that it's a data part that is more difficult than the technology part, to actually getting the access to assess the data, have the traceability systems, deliver the data that you can enter in your product passports. That will be much more difficult than the actual DPP delivery. And also to see the business opportunity. So while not only a reporting, so DPP is pretty much a sustainability report at product level. So why just see is that we try to use the term ESG intelligence. So while you're assessing all this data, let's make it into something useful, into something profitable at the same time, which means that what you don't need is a reporting tool. You need a tool that manages all the data and can help you being transparent. With that, we're done. A couple of minutes early, so how about that? Thank you.